DIY.
DIYers, welcome in. Very grateful to have your presence here today. We are, of course, joined by a special guest, a guest that in such a short window of time has already helped me to understand his world because he understands it from multiple perspectives. We're going to get into his origin. We're going to get into his connection to music. We're going to get into a few of those things as well as questions that you may have about Web3, the blockchain, and how it could affect the present and the future of independent music. Without further ado, though, please welcome Brandon Tory, CEO of Formless.xyz, a recording artist, a brilliant mind that I think you guys are going to really benefit from hearing information from. First and foremost, sir, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. And
Man.
thank everybody for being here.
Man, it's been a long time in the making. I know that for those of you that may or may not remember, I reacted to a video that Brandon posted that at the time I wasn't following him. I wasn't really too familiar with a lot of things. I wasn't familiar with Web3, blockchain, and I'm still, admittedly so, understanding more and more of this world, starting with the terminology and whatnot. But it was something about the presentation that Brandon chose to use that I think really spoke the language of me as an independent artist, as a creator. He knew how to talk to us, and it didn't surprise me that part of that is because of his origins as an artist himself, but it goes far beyond that. And I want to get into all that, but I want to first acknowledge the chat and those of you that chose to show here early. Sketch Nicknificent, what's going on with you, Sketch? Trey Rail, Taja, and those of you that are going to be joining us, I'm sure, make sure that you get your notebooks ready, get your questions ready, because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Now, so Brandon, let me bring you into my world real quick. Can I just take a second? Let me pause this music for a second. Can I bring you into my world?
Yeah.
For the longest, I've had so many people that whenever I express my gripes with Spotify, the low payouts, with the direction it seems that music marketers are telling artists, independent artists, to go in, I keep hearing people say, blockchain to solve all of this. It's just usually one word, and they say, well, this wouldn't happen if you were familiar with Web3. And I just being transparent with you, they're the reasons why we probably didn't have a conversation earlier. Nothing to do with you and your platform, Formless. But I say this to be transparent because my audience knows how I would get on their head, because I'm like, you're not saying anything. You're saying words, but it just feels like a word salad. And man, it was my introduction to your content that helped me to understand a little bit of this world. But before we get into all that, I want the people to get to know your history, because it's really interesting. You know, obviously as an artist yourself, but also your experience at Google. Like, there's a lot of things that I look at your resume and I'm like, this is not the normal resume for an artist that also has a business like your own. But let the people know a little bit about yourself, and a little bit of that origin story.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Brandon Tory Thorpe. I go by Brandon Tory as my artist name. It's my middle name. I'm from Brockton, Massachusetts. A little bit south of Boston. We just won a chip last night, so you already know.
Come on, man. It's too early for all this, man.
That's the first thing we gotta address. We gotta address that. But
we didn't have to. I mean, it's, you guys had 17 other times to do it, but you won't tell it to a Laker fan today? All right, we starting off like that. That's fine.
But
congrats.
I have very young parents. I grew up in the church. My parents were about 18, 19 when they had me, so we had a lot of financial troubles growing up. I met a lot of kids from a lot of different walks of life, and hip hop was just the language that we all spoke. No matter where you was from, no matter what you had been through, hip hop was like a connector. And at the same time, I got real passionate about technology. So I actually was dumpster diving when I was about 13, 14. We was living in a shelter, and I was dumpster diving for parts, and I built my own computer. And I still remember when the Linux Penguin came up on the screen. I saw the movie The Matrix, and I was like, "Yo, I want to be a hacker."
Wow.
And yeah, I spent like at least 10, 15,000 hours in my teenage years just learning everything I could about computers.
Right.
At the same time, all my friends is, they're in the streets. We all play basketball. We all do the normal things in the city. But I'm the only one, at least that I was aware of, that was doing this other thing in the computer world. And I would come back, to the house and they would see what I was doing. They'd, what are you, what is all that stuff on your screen?
Right.
So, this was in the early 2000s, late 90s. So at that time, computers weren't really cool. So in my neighborhood, like it wasn't something that I was proud of. It was more like a secret thing that I did, but I didn't really tell friends all that much about it. And so that identity switch between, being who I am as a person, as a teenager versus who I was in computers was what I use the word formless to describe. So like, yo, we can be multiple things. We can shapeshift and be in multiple different spaces. That identity was the word formless. And so that's what I decided to name the company after, but that's where that came from.
Okay.
I went on, I guess I'll pause there and then I could go deeper into the music side.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to dig into the music side because, the majority of my audience are independent artists and music producers. And many of them have come to this channel because of content that I reacted to. And I think this would be a great time to kind of bring them into a reintroduction to the video that I was introduced to you by. And it just, man, it led me down a rabbit hole where I didn't understand everywhere I was going, but damn it, this was, it was supremely important in terms of me understanding that there are alternative ways for us to generate income as creatives, as artists. So much of the conversation, it feels like that are solution oriented, or they present themselves as that, is that, oh, you just need to figure out how to improve upon your merchandising. Oh, you need to just figure out how to do. And I understand the logic in terms of them, wanting you to focus on being a touring artist. But I think it also runs the assumption that these are businesses that the artists are equally passionate about trying to monetize. And these are other businesses. That's why you have clothing brands that literally make that their number one focus. And so when I saw you in this video, man, this video was, it was really powerful because you weren't hitting us with the funnel guy voices. You wasn't hitting us with you wasn't hitting us with the Facebook ads. Wait, before you scroll, you weren't hitting us with this. It was and I'm starting to see that this is a conversation style that is so authentic that I will listen to. I don't listen to those guys because I know what I'm getting sold to. They remind me of the guys at the mall. Hey, my man's, you over there with the Jordans. I have no time, no patience. But I want you guys to get reintroduced to this video, and then I want to get more about the story of how this came to be. Let me refresh this really quick and make sure I catch it before. All right, let's get this.
All right, so here's why Money Can't Buy Love just changed everything. I took my song, Money Can't Buy Love, and I turned it into a smart contract where people could share revenue with me. On the first day, the song made about $160. $160 turns out to be somewhere between $1 to $2 a stream. If you don't know, streams right now essentially pay artists about $0.003 per stream. But also, people made money with me. So the night before the song dropped, I had a Twitter space, and I invited 100 people to join the splits with me. I used strategy to fill the splits. This gave me even more distribution. That meant that my distribution, my ability to get that song into the hands of more people, went up by a factor of 100, because everybody that was in the split started to retweet the song. They started to talk about the song because we had shared ownership in the song, and they knew they were going to be able to make passive income. Long story short, 9 days from there, the song has generated upwards of $700 in revenue. $700 in revenue for one song. Now, as a result of that, people have started to get paid. Everybody that's in the splits has now gotten paid as passive income to people that are in on the song. So, what does this mean for everybody involved? I got the email addresses of everybody who joined the splits. I got the email addresses of everybody who purchased the song. Now I can repeat that cycle, build up more email addresses, build up more of a network for distribution. And this is what we call a multiplayer digital economy. This is the seed of the beginning of the multiplayer internet.
Man, that video right there, as casual as it was in the car, I really want to know, before we dive into the information, I really want to know, did you anticipate this video making such such an impact, because I saw it show up in multiple places where it was folks just like myself who really didn't have much interest or much of an introduction into Web3 or some of this terminology like smart contracts. It was a video like this that made a lot of us kind of, you know, scratch our beards and say, yo, what is this all about? Did you have any idea that it would kind of make the impact that it made?
Nah, you know how people say like keep posting on Instagram, something's gonna go crazy?
Sure.
And like for me, it's just like I'm so tired of social media.
You and I both.
So that video, I was like, all right, let me just do the routine. Like I'm gonna record it, I'm gonna put it out. And then it wasn't even after I posted it, like a couple posts later,
Mhm.
something happened with the algorithm and people started to find that video. And it's the best performing video I've ever dropped. Got 12,000 shares. Everybody was talking about it. And what I noticed was that I think in the past I had tried to make things short, but I think what actually matters most is being clear. It's more about being clear and telling the story of what actually happened. And I think that was the difference with that video versus other things that I had tried.
Man, yeah, I agree. I agree. And it's funny because I saw content today that was pointing towards your videos need to be shorter as an artist if you want to be successful. And I'm not one that does well with absolutes and information that comes in absolutes. But nonetheless, man, this was something that I think was really powerful because you're showing us once again that there are other means for generating income off of the very thing that we invest so much income into. So I know you explained it in the video, but what are some of the details of how this came to be and how it differs maybe from, I think one version of this that I might be able to compare it to a little bit is sort of the revenue split model that a lot of artists do, say with the distro kids and whatnot. Now, there's things that I've read about that, and we'll get into that. But kind of how does that differ, and what are some details about that story that you can give us here?
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna talk a bit about how I even came to this, and then we can go into the technical details and like the differences between the different platforms. So um, after I got the degree in electrical engineering, what I was talking about with the Formless thing, and after I grew up, I got my degree in electrical engineering, and I became an engineer, and I decided to go full time into music. I worked at the engineering company for about a year and a half, and I said, you know what, I really want to try the music thing. So I moved to Atlanta 2011. 2011 is when I really got my start. I was in the studio pretty much full time trying to figure out how to be an artist. I learned so much down there. And 2014, I decided to move to Los Angeles. And this is when I got my first break in music. I put out this song called Comfortable. And Timbaland actually discovered it through a songwriting competition. And so he flew me to Miami. I got to meet Timbaland, and this is where I'm thinking like, okay, it's about to be crazy. It's about to be lit. I flew back to LA. I'm starting to put together mixtapes. I'm meeting more and more people. I'm throwing all these mansion parties. I put out a tape called Shine. I have features with artists like 24 Hours. I actually have millions of streams on Spotify. So this is one of the things that people won't tell you is that even artists with millions of streams on Spotify are having the same complaints. It's not just like emerging artists. So I have streams on Spotify. I took those songs down, but I had millions of streams. And what I recognized was that the amount of money I was spending on marketing to get those streams was always higher than the money I would make back.
Talk about
And
it.
that was when the perpetual cycle became very obvious to me of like, okay, these metrics are actually created to control us because the monthly actives that I have on Spotify, let's say I got 50,000 monthlies, I got 60,000 monthlies. I go in and shop a distribution deal to a little distribution company and say, hey, these are my monthlies. They say, okay, cool, get it to 70, get it to 80, get it to 150. So me and my manager would do that, but we started to count the amount of money we were spending to get that done, whether it was music videos, marketing budgets, and we're like, yo, this is crazy.
Right.
By the time we get to whatever monthly active listener count we need, we're gonna have spent more money than we're ever gonna make back. So that was the fundamental problem that I kind of realized. It wasn't like that it can't be done. It was like, what's the cost to get it done?
Sure.
So at that time, I had to take a serious look at my finances, and that's when I decided to go back into technology. So I joined Apple as a senior engineer. I worked there for multiple years, and I was doing this thing that I call multi-dream, which I think a lot of us do now, which is, we don't let our careers define us. We do multiple things. So I was an engineer at Apple. I was also in LA making music. I was putting things out. And this was the time that it occurred to me that we needed some technology to solve this problem. So this goes back to your question about, what actually is happening. So I was very skeptical of blockchain too. My wife was working at Morgan Stanley at the time, I think 2017. She was the one that said, hey, you should look at blockchain technology. Now I'm an artist. The first thing I'm thinking is, well, this doesn't solve anything for me. Like the main problem I have is the algorithm on social media and like me trying to get more people to see my stuff and me trying to get enough
Right.
streams to be
Right.
able to make money. So I didn't really understand the blockchain thing. It seemed very abstract and kind of fuzzy. I seen like some TED Talks, but it wasn't really concrete.
Right.
I'm with
Same
you.
here.
I'm with you on the stuff you said about blockchain. Like I didn't really get it at all. But at the same time, like I'm very passionate about technology. So I did feel like it was something I needed to do due diligence on to see if there was something there. So I read this white paper, and I'm sure some people are familiar with this, but the two white papers, the Bitcoin white paper and the Ethereum white paper.
Okay.
The Bitcoin white paper, I think, is undeniable. I think whether you're in music or you're not in music, if you read that, it fundamentally will change your worldview of economics and money in the future. So that was step one. Step two is the Ethereum white paper. And what I realized with that was that blockchain is not just about money, it's about control. Because we now can use this computer that's not controlled by the government, not controlled by corporations. And because of that, we can do new things.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it turned out that this, to me, started to connect to what the problem was that I was having in music, which was that every time I upload a song, I'm taking a file, let's say an MP3 file or a WAV file or a video file if it's on YouTube, and I'm telling that company to create all the rules. You decide the price, you decide the advertisers, you decide whether or not I can get my data, you decide all of that.
Facts.
We'll let you make all those rules in exchange for the distribution. Those are the terms. That's the terms of service that exist inside of those platforms. Okay. Now the question is, what happens if we wanted to make our own rules? If we wanted to say, well, I want to set the price, I want to determine who can advertise on my stuff, I want to determine the data that I get, I want to determine who makes money on my song.
Right.
Well, how would I do that? There's only one way to do that. You would have to create your own website, right? You'd have to DIY it. You have to create your own website. You have to rebuild Spotify, rebuild YouTube. And people have done this, right? People sell music from their own website.
Sure.
So this right here, this is the fork in the road that I think a lot of us have to make. Do we sell music direct to consumer on our own website, or do we go with the rules that exist on existing platforms?
Mm.
That's
really what it boils down to, right?
what it comes down to. Now, blockchain is the first technology in the history of the planet Earth that actually allows you to set the rules on a piece of property and still put it on other people's websites. So the idea was, okay, if I can actually package up those rules, the price that I want to charge, who gets paid, who can advertise on it, how much access time you have, whether or not now, if I can package that up and actually put it in the song itself, well, then the song can still live on Spotify, can still live on all these other websites, but I make the rules. And that's what blockchain enables you to do. So a lot of the media in blockchain is talking about NFTs, they're talking about selling tokens, and that's where a lot of the confusion comes in. All that stuff is possible, but like with the early internet, there was a lot of weird things that were possible, but after it matured, you could see what it really was. And so with blockchain, it was this idea of, oh, wait, we have this new place where we can put the rules and it doesn't have to be on my own website. So that was fundamentally the beginning of what I call, or what we call, a share technology. I'll pause there if you got any questions, and I can go a little deeper into how we got to the video.
So I think that's where I myself had confusion, because everything that you're saying makes sense as I'm listening to it, but I think there exists hesitation, because whenever we hear the terminology of kind of our own rules, a lot of us are asking, well, how long is that going to last until the government gets involved and these things start to kind of get regulated. And that was actually questions that a lot of my audience had last night as I was kind of introducing you being on here today. When you say that it's kind of our own rules, one, I guess, how is that able to exist like that, like how it is? And really for someone I'm very barely getting into this space. So like I said, I'm picking up a lot of stuff and I'm remembering a lot of things that I've seen even from your own videos. But when you say it exists, when you have your own rules in this space, how's that possible?
Yeah, great question. So rules on the internet are made in two ways. They're either made by the computer that the company owns, or they're made by your computer. So like when you download an app on your phone or on your computer, right? That app is a program, but a program is really just a set of rules. Now with Spotify, with YouTube, they, of course, it's their computer. You're putting your song on their computer.
Mm-hmm.
So their computer makes all the rules. They decide. The only reason you get paid 0.003 cents per stream is because that song is on Spotify's computer.
Mm.
Spotify's computer decides that. Now, when you have your own website, that's your computer, or a computer that maybe you rent in the cloud or whatever. And because it's on your computer, you could set the price. You could say, no, actually, it's going to be 10 cents a stream. Problem is, nobody's on your computer. Right? You're alone.
Right.
So that's the issue. So what if there was a different computer? What if there's another computer that's not owned by Spotify?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just yours, so that you're just alone, but it's just this public computer. That's what a blockchain is.
Mm.
So a blockchain is a new world computer that these brilliant people have been building over the last 10, 20 years, where essentially thousands of people are contributing their computers to collectively form one giant computer. And this giant computer is called the blockchain. And you can put your song on that thing, you can make your own rules, and nobody controls that computer. So that's the fundamental way that this works. Now, there's still a bunch of other questions, but that first piece of, well, where can we write our own rules? That's like a publicly open space. That's the answer to that part.
Yeah, that helps a lot. You know, I think a lot of folks who showed interest in things like the cryptocurrency space, you know, we saw the headlines, we saw the things that popped up where, you know, there were either people who were doing the things that human beings do no matter what environment they're in, where they're abusing sort of the freedom that they have, or you know, there's even, you know, I guess some biases in terms of who has access to certain things or who could be a part of certain clubs in the NFT space. You know, these are things that I think, especially as a minority going into this space, you know, we don't see a lot of representation of us that on the other, at least from the most popular names, I should say. But that's why it's so important when I see gentlemen like yourself that are articulating these things and also helping us to kind of come up to speed of what these things are and really easy to digest terminology. I think that's really important. So, you know, I would highly suggest, and I'm going to put it here in the description for you guys to go watch the presentation that you gave, where it was, I guess, this is one of your first, was it one of the first meetups that you did for Formless?
Yeah, this was the first meetup we did
okay.
in Boston. It was in person. I gave a presentation. So yeah, that's a good video.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure I link that there. So, okay, going back to this video that you shared with us where you were able to make this income, I think the one thing that was most intriguing to me, and I have questions about how it differs from how certain artists are doing it now, without naming any names, only because I myself figured out a lot about sort of the limitations of, specifically, say I'm using like a distributor, like a DistroKid or a TuneCore. You have a teams split feature that allows you to basically cut in people that are a part of your team on the revenue that comes in from streaming. Some artists have decided to use it, and I was even looking into it for myself, use that format to split that up amongst my fans who maybe want to buy a quote unquote share of that music. What I wasn't privy to is that there are laws that are put in place, and I don't know the exact law. I think you know the one I'm referring to. What is that? Security.
It's United States security.
United States security. So could you talk a little bit about, I guess, the limitations of doing it that way, and the ones that don't exist in this blockchain technology?
100%. Yes. So it all comes down to this fundamental idea of a contract, right? I think in music we all understand contracts. Even if we're producers, like we sign contracts to license our stuff. Mm-hmm. So what DistroKid does, and what Spotify, what all the distributors do, is they create these contracts for you that are kind of like blanket licensing agreements, and then you can enter things like you said as like team splits or these different things in these contracts. A lot of that is like legacy infrastructure, right? Like you can't change the contract because it wouldn't make any sense for them to change it for a million different artists.
Right.
So you kind of get whatever they offer you. What blockchain enables you to do is to create your own contract, and they call it a smart contract. So the first term I used in that video was I created a smart contract for my song. Mm-hmm. So that's what that meant. I used blockchain to create a different kind of contract. All right, so in United States securities law, there are some rules about the types of contracts that you can actually create. And they're meant to protect consumers from scams. So, for example, there's something called the Howey test, which determines whether or not a contract represents a security or an asset represents a security. And if it represents security, that means it has to be regulated in a certain way. This is probably the issue that you're talking about. And so the way that that's tested is in what's called the Howey test. And there are several prongs that lawyers use to determine whether or not something's a security. And the first prong, this is the most important thing. First prong is an investment of money. The second prong is into a shared enterprise with an expectation of profit.
Mm-hmm. That's the one I kept
So
seeing.
with the scenario you just described with artists selling things for people to get into the splits, I won't comment on whether or not that is security. I would say based on those criteria, that may be part of the issue. So in the video that I posted, and I think a lot of this didn't have anything to do with securities law. It really was just like, I thought it was cooler.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask anybody to buy anything. So it was never make an investment of money to make money with me. It was actually, I want to reward people that's already been loyal for free. So if you're in this space right now, if you retweet this, if you came to the show, if you're one of my followers, just whatever, like tap this link, let's make money together, let's go win, let's be a team. To me as an artist, that feels a lot more genuine because we all know it's up and down. I don't know if I'm going to make this money back on this. So for me to ask you to invest, I feel like it's just not dope. You know what I mean? I think it's doper to say, yo, I just want you to be on this team. Let's make it multiplayer. Let's see what happens. It might hit. And so that's the primary distinction between scenario one, where you probably will run into those issues that I outlined, versus scenario two, which is what I call the multiplayer internet, which is where we can actually just join experiences together, not invest for future earnings. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. So for someone like I said, myself, who is trying to understand how does that transaction occur? Like what does that look like for the person that says, yeah, I would love to, because I think it's a brilliant concept. I think that there's a lot of platforms, especially when you think about sort of the crowdfunding platforms that are already pushing in that direction of your audience, not just being your biggest supporter, but also being ones that see something in return for their support. You know, I think traditionally it's always been, you know, well, you get to see your favorite artists do well. Well, it's like, that's cool, but if there was an opportunity for your audience to enjoy in some of the success of it, why wouldn't you want that to be? And I think that to me, it almost, without even trying to solve the algorithm issue and them having their own rules, you almost do that because now those people who have been rewarded that opportunity to engage in that now are helping you kind of be even more friendly to the algorithm. Now the algorithm is picking up this content because everybody's retweeting it and liking it. But aside from that, how does that sort of transaction work? Like what are sort of the steps that people would take to do that for themselves as an artist and their fans?
Yeah, great question. So basically with the technology that we built, so our company's called Formless, and we built a platform called Share. So it's almost like, Apple's a company, then an iPhone, which is a product, shares the product from the company Formless. And what we specialize in is creating those smart contracts on the blockchain. So you don't have to think about it. You just hit a button, it creates it, just like YouTube or like a Spotify upload or SoundCloud upload, sorry. And with that, you get a link. And the link, you could send it to anybody you want. But what's different about this link is it's not just a link to listen to the song. It has a button that says join. And if they press that button, then it'll say, okay, enter your email address. And then when they enter their email address, using blockchain technology, we create this financial account for them in the background. They authenticate. They don't have to use a password. They can authenticate with just Google sign in or with Face ID if they want to. It's their option. It's up to them. And as a result of that, within 5 to 10 seconds, they are now authenticated into a smart contract, which guarantees that any money that flows into that contract will be routed to them based on the percentage that you decide. Now, what's really dope about the tech is normally, like with the DistroKid thing that we talked about, that's like 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, but this is infinite. It's infinite. So you could do a contract with 1,000, 10,000 people. And so that's where you beat the algorithm. And that's what we started to see. So in the beginning, my whole idea was, all right, I need more control. I want to set a higher price. I want to make more money. But what you run into with that is, okay, yes, I can create more rules. Yes, I can charge more, but that doesn't really help the consumer. So now our incentives are misaligned because they're thinking, well, Spotify's free. So how does it help me if I'm paying you more for your music? It doesn't mean that I shouldn't ever charge for my music. I definitely still charge for my music, but I had to think of, well, what's another thing that we can do here to make sure that everybody feels like this is a win, not
Got it.
just the artist side, but the consumer side, the fan side. So what we did was we basically created these smart contracts with these join links for 100 people, 200 people. And we started putting them on social media. Like, yo, if you retweet this post, you get the link, tap the button, we're going to make money together. And then what we also did was we started to take our marketing budget and just reward people, even if the song didn't make money. We still going to pump money into the contract just because you retweeted it. So
Mm.
all the impressions is if this gets 1,000 impressions, the whole community is going to make $100. If it gets 10,000 impressions, we're going to make even more money. And when we started doing that, that's when stuff started to go viral. So we did this on Instagram. Where we did an Instagram post with a friend of mine, Daniel from Kickback Boston, which is a brand, and we said anybody who reshares the post, you get a link to join splits. We're all going to make money together. As the impressions go up on Instagram, the whole community is going to make $50 per 1,000 impressions. That night, it got 1,400 shares.
Ooh.
The account is a small account. So imagine if you got a big account. That's what I'm talking about. It's 10,000 people, teams. The future of the internet's not going to be followers. So right now, I think we've been tricked into this mindset of I need 1 million followers to be successful.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest mistakes I ever made as an artist when I was younger was I would look at my fan base or my streaming counts and I would be disappointed by 100,000 streams. Like 100,000, I mean, that's not going to get me signed. Like 100,000 people is not going to get me signed.
Right.
But now what I realized is now if you got 1,000 people, if you got 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people who are on your team and incentivized for you to win, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous network. And so that's the way that we're thinking about this now.
So when you say that the impressions that are being generated, the folks that are sharing in this is the part that I think I asked you this question specifically when we jumped online just to kind of get an idea of some of the things we would discuss here. But how is that money? Like what's
Yeah.
you know what I'm getting at? Like how is that money? Like where is it? Because I think that's been another thing that's been sort of an issue that I had initially with having people explain sort of just cryptocurrency in general. How much of that is actual real money that I can transfer over? What happens when things happen, when crashes occur, and all these different things that are happening where it's like it's almost like trying to understand a completely different language. But I am curious, and I'm sure there are people here too. Like, where is that money, and how is that money generated?
Yeah, that was the number one question in the Instagram post. So the question is, okay, cool, we can do the revenue share thing, but where does the money come from? And there's three places, three sources of revenue. The first source of revenue is direct to consumer purchases. So if you would like to sell your music, you can do so on the platform. You can choose the price. You can choose whether or not people can download it. You can choose how long they have access to it. And it also can show up inside of other websites, anything that is compatible with blockchain technology. And so any money that you make as a result of those sales, let's say you got a dope new freestyle, you got a dope new single that's an exclusive offer that's coming out before your album, those purchases are one source of revenue that you can connect to a smart contract. That's what I did in the video. In the video, I took a song that I had called Money Can't Buy Love. I charged people to be able to download it. I then took that revenue and that was automatically distributed to everybody that was in the collective. So that's revenue source number one.
Do you remember what that price point was for that song that you put out there?
I think I charged too much. I actually wish that I had reduced it. I had charged $5 for the song. Wow. So that was good because it did do revenue, but I did get feedback from some of my fans that was like, yo, if this was a little bit lower, I think you would have done more transactions. So, but that's the thing. We just let everybody decide. You can decide whatever price you want. So that's revenue source number one. Revenue source number two is essentially you can use your marketing budget to sponsor revenue into the contract if you want to.
Okay.
So you can actually set it up so that based on some goal, you reward the community as that goal happens. So in the Instagram case, we actually set it up so that it was monitoring the views on the post. And as those views went up, we automatically distributed our own budget into the
I was going
contract.
to ask you that as well. So that's from your marketing budget personally that you have already. Got it. Okay.
Because I wanted it to, I'd rather spend it on that than spend it on ads, because now my community can win and it's much more organic. So that's revenue source number 2. Revenue source number 3 is anything on the internet that makes money that can be connected to crypto. So for example, Stripe connects to crypto. Shopify can connect to crypto. So anything that can connect to crypto, you can actually take that and plug it in as a revenue source to these shared smart contracts. And that is what opens up the whole world of decentralizing all different types of revenue streams. So those are the 3 broad groups. But just to simplify, to break it down, what I did in that video was direct to consumer purchases of my song and sharing that revenue. And then in the Instagram one that I talked about, that was me sponsoring the revenue so that the community could make noise over time.
And excuse my ignorance on this one. When you're saying a decentralized network, what does that actually mean? Or decentralized in general, I should say. I'm looking at the description here. My brain said decentralized network, but when you say decentralized, what are we saying?
So decentralized means that when you create a song on Share, which is the name of our technology, it's a little bit different than how we've always thought of things, which is that you're uploading it to a platform like YouTube. Because YouTube is a centralized corporation. Centralized meaning the CEO of YouTube makes the decisions about YouTube.
Got you. Okay.
Centralized means that when you create this song on Share, you're actually putting it onto a network that nobody controls. So you're in complete control of the pricing, of how it can show up in other places. And that's what makes it decentralized. Decentralized just means there's no single authority on this network. It's an open network that you can participate in. And so what's exciting about that is that people can't change the rules from under the hood on you. So for example, if you use Share, and like I said in the video, you get all the email addresses of everybody who transacted and all those things.
Right.
There's nobody that's going to come in and change the rules on you to say like, well, you don't get access to those things, or to change the rules so that you can't reach that audience. And those things that we encounter on the internet today are because of centralized control systems. Decentralized means that nobody can change those rules on you.
Which you start seeing, especially, you say specifically YouTube, we see every year there's something else that pops up that didn't exist when you initially signed up. And you start to get more rules where it's like, all right, now I have to pay attention to these things. So when it comes to the this is something I was curious about, and I think I might have even asked you about this. When it comes to the listening experience for the person that does say, hey, okay, I'm going to jump into this and I want to support you direct to consumer through this network. What does their listening experience look like, and how does it kind of rival the convenience of traditional streaming?
Yeah, great question. Right now, it's there's two ways that people listen. One is very similar to a SoundCloud link or a YouTube link, where you get a direct link, you stream it right there in the browser. You can background the browser; it will continue to play.
Okay.
So that's one. Two is you can install it as what's called a progressive web app, which means that you can open the streaming app and you can hit a button and it will install as an app on your phone and you can stream it there.
Fire.
So you don't have to use the app store to download it. You can just install it direct from the website, which is pretty dope. But the thing that's actually more exciting is that you can think of it more like a back end for DSPs, for future DSPs. Because the song lives on the blockchain, all DSPs that are compatible with blockchain, and there's a couple of them now, Spinamp is one, there's a couple new ones that are popping up. All of those can also stream the music. So it's not putting it on like our website, you're putting it onto the blockchain, which makes it compatible with all the future DSPs that are able to integrate with blockchain. And that's the piece that I was saying is important, because us just having it on our own website, how does that solve the problem we already had? Which is if I force everybody to listen to it on my website, there's no distribution. So that's the way to think of it.
Okay. And I think one of the biggest, one of the biggest arguments or fears that a lot of up and coming artists have, because I more so talk to folks who are more established independent artists, and they pretty much know their way around conducting their business online. But for those who are saying, well, do I need an audience for something like this to be successful? Uh, that's what they say about direct to consumer in general. If you're running it off your website, even if you have a Bandcamp, a lot of folks are like, well, if I don't have people that are already familiar with the space or already making those purchases, is this something that will be an obstacle for me? Does the same thing exist in what you're describing here?
I think for sure. I think direct to consumer is an obstacle, but I think you have to be strategic with how you leverage direct to consumer. So, one artist that I'll just shout out who I am a fan of is La Russell. I do think he's done a lot of innovative things, and I think one of the things he's done that's pretty dope is giveaways for the community, right? Like free rent and things like that, which I think is I think that's the future. So the reason I brought that up is because I don't think the best way to use the technology is to just come out the gate and go direct to consumer. That was what I originally thought, but that's not the way I think now.
Okay.
What I think is actually more important is to combine free experiences with direct to consumer experiences, but you start with free and you use the marketing tactic that I talked about to incentivize distribution as a first step. So it's not so much about, I want to make a ton of money on direct to consumer payments on this song. It's more like, I want to get this very broadly distributed. So I'm going to reward the community as the views go up, as the plays go up, or whatever it is. And we've seen incredible results with that. Doing it on Twitter, doing it on Instagram, people go crazy and it starts to go viral. So you do that. And if you do that enough times, even if it costs you some of your marketing budget to do that, because you're getting the data of the people who are engaging, when the time is right, you should be able to go direct to consumer. So you have to use it strategically, I would say.
Right. And I think there's a few different things that I'm finding myself, what you just said to me right now is something that I've been really having to revisit my philosophy on when it comes to sharing direct to consumer, because a lot of times, I forget that I'm not just talking to myself, right? I'm not just talking. There's a lot of different areas of inexperience and experience where folks are trying to figure out how does that work into their business model, and no business model is exactly the same. So I am kind of, I wouldn't say pivoting, but I am making sure that I add the extra caveat that this is not really something that, out the gate, because of how expensive it is and how much income it does require, even when you start doing things like, getting your ISRC codes and your registering codes and making sure that you're doing things the right way and your copyright and all these things are going to require a lot of money. You got collaborators. And so as you're trying to get your footing and really, establish some of that early money so that you can grow, I don't really tailor the conversation to beginners as much anymore. But, okay. So I'm trying to figure out how I can word this question. That's interesting, man. It's man, my brain is swirling right now, and I want to make sure that I give an opportunity for those that are in here. You've been already hearing us have this conversation, and I know many of you have your own questions, so please prepare your questions as we sort of have this conversation. I'm curious about this, though. This is something that I've been kind of having a back and forth about, because I understand using the freemium model to bring, to get more reach, to bring more awareness, but it has felt, and I'm talking to you artist to artist at this point, it does feel like there's been a deliberate effort to make art, specifically music, make art seem like it has no value, right? To push the conversation about how much is a song really worth, and nobody's willing to pay this, and all these different things that you see pop up. It was a lot of the energy that was pushing against me when I first chose to take my music off of streaming. I wonder, do you share some of those viewpoints in terms of how you view art? Has that shifted now that you're seeing sort of the benefit in doing, I guess, both of those? Yeah, in terms of just overall, how do you kind of view that?
My views on this have evolved over time. The one thing I would say is that price and value are actually a little bit different.
Sure.
It's more about control. So the biggest problem with Spotify, I think, is although 0.003 is very low, it's the fact that you have no say at all. It's to control people. So let's say you wanted to charge less, you can't even charge less. So if you wanted to make your music free, you can't even make it free. They have to subscribe or listen to ads or whatever. So
Right.
it's not even about unconditionally saying that the music should be more expensive. Right. That's a really important thing to think about, because in this model, what I'm actually saying is, well, I actually want the control so that I can make it less expensive and share the revenue. I want to be free and share revenue. I can't do that on a platform like Spotify, even though Spotify is more expensive than the
Mm-hmm.
model that I'm saying. So I think it's more so about the control piece. My biggest thing was always in the beginning, it was what you just said. It was music fundamentally has value. Music is valuable. It's so impactful and foundational to our lives that there's no way you can tell me that it's only worth whatever these companies tell us it's worth,
Sure.
that it's worth nothing, right? What I would argue though is that even if you can set the price, which I think artists can and should, just like fashion, just like Virgil said, yo, this t-shirt $600. I don't, whatever you think is,
Right.
that's up to the $600. I think music's the same way. I do think that. Now, given that, you have to decide what's the strategy that's going to make you successful. So,
Okay.
those are the two things that go together. So now you got to ask yourself, okay, is it more valuable to me to get that 99 cents, or is it more valuable to me to get that retweet? This
Mm.
is a decision you got to make. And what I would say is, depending on your goals, you need smart contracts to give you enough flexibility so you can make those decisions, so that you can hop up and grow to the point that you're making sustainable revenue. So I do
Mm.
agree music has value for sure. But I think at the end of the day, going to music platforms and asking them to increase the price is antithetical to the idea that we implicitly have value. The only way we have value is if we control what
What
the
that
value
value
is.
is.
Even if I say it's zero, that's my choice.
Right.
So that's
And I've always had the argument that no matter what the platform is, even if it's the one that we're talking on right now, when you're in someone else's house, they get to make the rules.
that's exactly what I'm
You know, we're
saying.
renting space, we're renting rooms, and we're saying, hey, you know, look, come to my platform, come to my platform. At the end of the day, they will always have the last say in that. What about the smart contracts? Now, you might have covered some of this, but just asking specifically, what about the smart contracts offer so much flexibility that I guess other
Yeah.
contracts may not be able to offer?
So remember when I had said Bitcoin, this paper, it's 9 pages, and it's 9 pages that pretty much changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I brought that up is because it introduced this idea of programmable money. So the reason this is important is because people that come from wealth, or people that are at powerful institutions, have already had access to the idea of programmable money. They already have these bots that do arbitrage and trading strategies and all this digital economy stuff. That already happens. But for artists and for people that don't come from that world, we've never really had access to programmable money and the ability to do these types of contracts where you can move money around between people.
Mm-hmm.
Smart contracts gives us that. So now, instead of saying, all right, I'm gonna sign this blanket licensing agreement that's gonna pay me 0.003 cents per stream, and then I'll wait for DistroKid to make this update next year so I can share the revenue, and then maybe once they get the regulation thing, then I can share money. Instead of that, I'm gonna just say, actually, I'm gonna create a new contract with programmable money. And oh, I got a new idea. I'm gonna just pay 1,000 people, everybody who saved and reshared my last Instagram post. Every time the post gets a like or a comment that's a fire emoji, I'm gonna pay the collective until it gets 100,000 views, and then once it gets 100,000 views, I'm gonna sell my song for 99 cents. You
Right.
can't do that. There's no way you can do that in a regular contract. You can do that in a smart contract. You can
Mm.
literally take exactly what I just said and set up a little computer program that does that. And that's what smart contracts enable us to do. And the whole narrative of NFTs and all these other things is such a small glimpse of what this technology actually is.
Right. I mean, and it sounds like depending on the size of your audience, that's if you had to do that manually, that'd be a lot of maintenance to do. So I want to get into the conversation of Formless and you know what exactly that provides for the artists that are interested in wanting to sign up and look more into it because the URL is here in the description. It's up here on the page right now, or on this video, I should say, right now. What does that look like in terms of an artist wanting to sign up for that or look deeper into it?
Yeah, you can go to share.formless.xyz. The link's in the description. And it's a platform. I basically have taken the last 2 years to take everything I know and everything I've learned and create a tool that will enable you to create these smart contracts. So you can go to the platform, you can sign up with email, and you can do things like say, okay, I'm gonna sell direct to consumer, I'm gonna share the revenue with 1,000 people.
There it is.
And it's gonna continue to grow over time. We're gonna continue to add features and make it doper, and the more conversations we have, it is in beta, so there may be things that you might have questions about that we can make better, but the idea was, as much as I love music and I still am an artist at heart, with my passion for technology, I really would love to contribute something that can help people to do these things in an innovative way. So that's what the platform is. You can go, you can try it out, and like the thing I did in the video, you can replicate that just by going through a form, filling out your song name, how many people you want, and just and give it a try.
Is there a wait list for something like this, or is it something to where you have to get approved? Because that's how a lot of platforms I'm seeing are working now, where there's an approval process, and I think that sometimes that's dope.
We building in public, yeah. So it's like, yo, just use it, and if there's a problem, hit me up, and like we'll figure it out. But and when I say problem, I mean like a problem with your upload process. There won't be any problem with the contracts or anything like that, because that's all battle tested. We've had security audits and all of those things. But if it's something where you can't figure something out, then we'll just make it better. But it's open. It's not waitlisted.
Super dope. Super dope. And then I guess one of my last questions, as I'm starting to kind of wait for some of the questions. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask that. We'll put it here on the screen and we'll get those answers directly. And we appreciate, first of all, your time and just being so open about this information that I don't know why it has been so challenging for our space, for music, for artists to get just these, like you, I mean, we were waiting on you, obviously, but just to get these straightforward answers, man.
No, it's like a translation thing. I mean, everything you said about blockchain in the space is true. Like, it's not like your imagination. There are a lot of platforms and a lot of things that I also don't think make sense. So it's a timing thing, right? It's like the right pieces have to come together, the right conversations have to happen. And also it's got to be a dialogue, right? One of the biggest problems I've always seen in tech is when people say like, yo, we're going to make the tech, and then the artists like, you just use it. But we never actually talked. Like, it's not, we don't own the tech. We didn't contribute to how we wanted to be designed. So of course it's going to be confusing. So that's why I'm saying, like, use the platform and then talk to me, because that conversation is actually what makes the thing better, because it has to incorporate the ideas of the actual culture that we come from. If we don't incorporate that, it's going to feel foreign.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of us are, hopefully we have our antennas up. I know a lot of folks in general are very paranoid about, the emergence of certain tech platforms mirroring some of the mistakes of major labels in the past, and them kind of being the new version of that. And, when I see things like the multiple firings at some of the labels, all I can think about is there's about to be a flood of sharks in the water that are going to be like, oh, I know exactly who I can talk to these independent artists. They got the money, man. Let's get to them. And, I think that all of us are going underneath an unlearning process, an evolving conversation to see how this works for us. Two questions I have, and I'm still waiting for some more questions to come in here. It seems like a lot of folks that are already familiar with the crypto space are in here. Shout out to you. How much experience is necessary for a consumer who sees this, and do they need to have some prior experience with blockchain technology? Is it something that they go to the website, or they go up to the invite and they're able to kind of just sign right up, or is there a learning curve that is necessary for them wanting to sign up?
My honest answer is zero, and it wasn't always zero. It used to be really hard. But we did so much work that now my grandmother joins Splits and makes money no problem. Like, anybody can join Splits just by hitting a link tap, because we do the wallet thing automatically. We got a bank account integration where you can cash out just by pressing a button. You don't have to know anything about crypto. It's more like the back end. Like, the back end is this programmable digital money, but the front end is more like a SoundCloud link or a YouTube link.
Can you talk a little bit about that too? Because I promise you, you probably heard my exhale in our conversation when we first talked on the phone, where I was trying to figure out, not to quote Rick Ross, but Rick Ross he was saying some crazy stuff about somebody who was in the crypto space. He was like, Where's the money? I don't see the
yeah.
money. Where is it in the sky? Is it in the clouds? You talked about how there is the opportunity, because one of the benefits I see with using a Bandcamp is that Bandcamp is paying out every single day via PayPal, and I'm seeing the transactions as opposed to waiting 3 to 6 months from streaming. I'm seeing those transactions kind of show up instantaneously. How does that work with this platform as well?
It's instant payments.
Instant payments.
Yeah, because the technology is built on crypto, it means the payments are in real time. So the money's flowing in real time. To your question about Ross, which is a good question, well, where is the money? How am I supposed to spend this digital money? So basically they have what's called an off ramp. And an off ramp just means you could put in your debit card number or your bank account number and press a button, and then it just cashes it out. So you can cash out same day on Share the same way that you would with PayPal or anything else. And again, this is stuff that we had to put in place, because without it, none of my friends or the people I am cool with could use it. They were like, nah, it has to just go to my bank account. So
Right.
so we took
And I applaud you too, man, because I know that in the same token that we have artists that are frustrated with the tech side of things, or are folks who are involved only in tech, I know that there's got to be an equal amount of frustration from those who are in the tech world, who are trying to understand why artists are not seeing how revolutionary some of these things are. Yes or no?
I empathize with artists. I don't think artists are wrong. I think that the technology has been very cryptic. There's been a lot of things that have not really met the expectation of artists. And I think for me as an artist, at least, what I really want to do is create something dope. Like, I want to create something that's aesthetically dope, that feels great to the consumer, that's going to last time. I don't want to think about, the digital money and smart contracts.
Right.
Only time I want to think about that is if for some reason that makes the art feel more innovative, where it's like, oh, this is an interactive experience, we're going to make money together. And that's a part of the feeling of the experience. So, it just takes time. It took time for that stuff to happen. But I think anybody that's looking at artists like, oh, artists just don't get it, I think that's the wrong
point of view for it.
Artists, I think, are definitely going to lead the way in terms of what people want to see here.
Yeah, and it is nowadays, man. It is very overwhelming, and I think a lot of artists are being very vocal about how overwhelming it is to wear all these hats, right? As content creator, as sometimes editor for your own stuff, mixing and mastering, and when it comes to all of these things, cost money. Like I said, there's a reason why the Sam Ashes of the world, unfortunately, are shutting down, but they're expecting artists to be able to pay certain price points to stay in business. But so much about the very product that is the center focus of our business, I think a lot of companies have told them, oh, that's not really worth anything. And someone said the quote, and I forgot who it was. It was like, if music is not worth anything, how do we have a music industry? And it just kind of was something that sat with me. Did you have something that you want to add to it?
I definitely think music is worth something. I mean, I personally think that that one of the mistakes that the music industry has is its heavy dependence on the tech industry, in the way that the deals are structured and the way that advertising revenue flows. Because of that scenario, most of the revenue comes from platforms that are actually in a different industry. And so, that's something that happened years ago. But one of the things I would say to artists is that, I think we've been told this lie that, like, yo, if you're emerging, or if you're DIY, if you're this, then like you're just not popping enough. And like, once you get popping, these problems go away. But I got friends that won Grammys, like my investor, Dallas Austin's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. He says, yo, I got the same problems. I'm tired of the algorithm. I'm tired of all these things.
Man.
And so, it's not really, it's actually a very widespread problem that everybody's feeling on the internet.
Man, and it's crazy because I didn't bring it up earlier, but I saw someone had documented Ice Spice monthly listeners from last year compared to this year had dropped off about 20 million listeners. They were able to document that, but I look at that, and I kind of look at that, and I take it with a grain of salt, because I know bots play a factor into that. I know that there's got to be some kind of like some kind of churning or just something that's happening that other things are affecting that. But I look at that and I'm like, these things can't be sustainable, especially for these budgets that they're shelving out millions and millions and millions of dollars for. There's a certain expectation around where these numbers need to be at to for that to be profitable. But
It's the reality of the music industry that people don't really want to talk about. But like, if you're really competing in the music industry, for like me, like where I was, you talking to all different types of companies about like, yo, what strategy we got to use to get this popping on launch day, and there's streaming farms and there's bot companies and there's everybody got a promise that they can deliver on, and people spending big money to be successful in their first week, on their first couple of weeks. And the question is, it's not like how do you get these numbers? Like that actually I think is solved. Is how much is it going to cost you to get these numbers? And are you going to keep that up? That's the actual issue.
Yeah, that one right there, I think is what's driving a lot of folks crazy. So I got a few questions here for you. I know that they've been patient with it, but Said the Dweller here says, is there any FDIC or similar protection since this service makes payouts to debit/bank accounts?
That's a good question. The FDIC piece would probably pertain to the bank account that you use to receive the payouts, more so than the technology that facilitates the transfer. We actually do our transfers through a partnership that is regulated with a company called Beam. And so with that piece, there may be something like that, but I highly doubt it. The regulation around FDIC is mainly for balances held in USD in your bank.
Okay. Child of God says, I'm late. Is there a token associated with the Formless platform?
Great question. No, there's no token. We only use blockchain as the programmable money, what we call like liquidity, to actually move the money around. You don't have to buy a token. You don't have to ask your audience to use a token or anything like that.
For those who are still very illiterate in this space, what the hell is a token? I'm not afraid to ask these questions. I'm not going to sit in here and act like, yeah, token. What the hell is a token?
Token is it like if I come to you and I say like, yo, buy my song, and you say how much does it cost, and I'm like, it costs 30 DAX, and you're like, what was a DAX? I'm like, well, DAX is a token I made up. And you're like, okay, that's what a token is. A token is when I made up my own money, and because I made up my own money, there's all types of tactics that people can use to control that price of that money. It's not always bad. Tokens can be good, but most of the things we've seen have been either confusing at best and problematic at worst when it comes to tokens. It doesn't mean that I don't think tokens can be dope. Tokens can be dope in the future, but we don't have a token right now.
Yeah, I mean, if it ain't Chuck E. Cheese, I don't know anything about these tokens, so I will get more information as I go. Trail Rail said earlier, I see it clicking for you, Curtis. Yeah, there's a reason why this gentleman is here today, because he has been the only one that I've been exposed to up until this point that is not only speaking sense, but also speaks from a place of empathy for the artist. And I think that that's a rarity, because I think there's a lot of folks who feel the empathy for artists, not a lot of folks that are able to express it in a way that's like, dog, I know what it's like to run through your marketing budget as an artist. I know the feeling of sitting here and looking at numbers and saying, yeah, that's cool, but there's so much more to this process. There's so much more to a career. How does this going to be sustainable? So when I hear those kind of stories coming from Brandon, I'm like, he gets it from multiple levels, and he's able to dive deep in both of those spaces to help us get a better understanding of ourselves as well as the other world that we're learning about. Trail Rail says, I had to step away for a bit, but a question for Brandon. How can I, as an independent artist, start using your platform? I have a catalog I'm looking to drop across Web3 and would love to check out Formless.
Super dope. So two ways. One, you can go to share.formless.xyz and you can sign up right now and start using the technology. Two, if you go to formless.xyz, we have a Discord channel, which I'm in all the time. And if you have any questions or if you want to link up and I can actually walk you through things, I'd be happy to do that as well. So the tech is there. And if you'd like to maybe jump on a call or something like that, like I'd love to help you get that catalog uploaded.
Okay. And what was that link one more time?
So share.formless.xyz is the link to the technology, and formless.xyz is just our corporate website where you can find out just information about us.
Okay, I want to get that share.formless. I have the other one inside the description, but I need to put the share.formless down there below. All right, Nandi, I got you. Or Nandi, I got you. Another question here is from Staggers Music. If I remove my music from streaming platforms, is there still a way to encode my music to monitor how it's being used across the world?
There is. It depends where you want your music to be available. If your music is only available on the blockchain, then that data would be available on the blockchain through transaction. But let's say you're moving from streaming, but you decide to keep it on YouTube or somewhere else, or even your own website. There are these things called, you might already know this, but there are these things called APIs. And the APIs are these programming interfaces where you can actually set things up to track metrics on how your things perform on different platforms. So you could set that up. You can actually create a smart contract that's connected to an API that maybe reads the views on YouTube or reads the views on your own website and does different things in the contract. So that stuff is all possible. That's a lot of the stuff that we're excited about with Formless.
Sweet, sweet. Yeah, I think that was the, I think there was another question here in terms of someone. Do you teach small workshops via Zoom or any platform like that?
So I would love to. I haven't done one yet. The closest thing I did to that was the meetup, the in-person meetup that we had that Curtis mentioned, which is in the description. Um, but yeah, I mean, if people want that, I think that'd be super helpful for a lot of people.
Okay. Uh, Last question here was how can someone build with you on a developer standpoint?
So there's a website, docs.formless.xyz, and that's where our developer documentation is. So if you're comfortable with programming, or if you're interested in learning more about programming, that's actually one of my favorite ways to collaborate is directly in the developer documentation. So that means, like, let's say you want to build your own streaming platform, or you want to build your own website that uses blockchain stuff, or you want to build your own app. You don't have to build everything. You can use our docs, leverage the stuff that we've built, and then build the thing that you care about on top of that.
Sweet. So we're winding down here, and there was two things that I had in my notes that I wanted to ask you about, man, because this is exciting news for your company and for your for all of your teammates and what you guys are doing, man. Congratulations, first of all, on I see here that you were able to successfully raise 2.2 million in pre-seed funding. Can I give you a round of applause here for that? That's huge, man. That is huge, especially in this economy, man. For those who are unfamiliar, what exactly does that mean? Like, how important is that to a growing business as yours?
Oh, it's so important. It's foundational. Pre-seed funding is just a term that's used in venture capital. So pre-seed basically means the earliest stages of a company. So in the earliest stages of a company, you typically try to raise what's called a pre-seed round. And so we raised a $2.2 million pre-seed round. What that enabled us to do is to hire a team to build technology to make progress. And so that's very, very foundational. And as you said, it's a difficult thing to do. It's pretty tough. So we were really excited about that.
Man, and then also too, I saw that you sat down with Maxine Waters of the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services. How did that meeting go? I'm going to try to put this up here on the window as you kind of explaining that. There's a lot of excuse me, I was not familiar with your game. I knew that you were a Boston Celtics fan. You know, and that was the only blemish on your record. That was the only blemish that I noticed. But no, man, this is it's super dope because there's a lot of folks that I've been following that I'm always in amazement of the things that they're doing. What's the brother's name? How do I pronounce his name? Let me see if I can type this in really quick. What is his brother's name? not Idris.
I just Sandu,
Idris Sandu. Yes, thank you, thank
the
you.
last, yeah.
Man, I saw him in the comments, and he was like, singing your praises and everything. So, first of all,
Yeah.
tell us about how that was. What was the event, and then how was that meeting Maxine Waters, such a legendary and influential name?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, we have relationships at A16Z. A16Z stands for Andreessen Horowitz. They're one of the most prolific investors in the world, and we received funding from their crypto division. And I got an invitation to come out and with us with a couple other founders and investors to have a conversation with Congresswoman Waters. And really, it was about the piece that you talked about earlier, which is the regulatory environment and how's this stuff going to look in the future. And
Mm.
it was great. I mean, her and her team just wanted to listen. They just wanted to listen to founders and hear our stories. And I was honored to have the opportunity, especially with the impact that she's had within the culture and within the space overall.
And it's got to be encouraging, especially as folks, like I said last night, as I was talking about this. I'm gonna put this picture right here on the screen. As folks were talking about, well, it's only a matter of time before the government comes in and they shut down all the fun, and it's like this is supremely encouraging to see how hands-on and how there are folks, once again, I keep stressing this, that look like us, that are seeing, okay, how is this affecting these spaces? How can this be something that benefits the people in total? I guess it's got to be super encouraging to see how hands-on they are in the questions that they're asking.
I mean, one thing, and this is something that Idris and I talked about years ago, was that these new changes in technology with AI, with cryptocurrency, with everything that's happening, they're incredible opportunities to create wealth. And so, it's really important, of course, to be careful, but at the same time to do the due diligence and to understand how this stuff's going to impact society. And so it's definitely promising to see members of the government actually listen to what's happening on the ground. Because, like you said, if you just pay attention to the media, it can be very skeptical. Okay, what is this? Is even a real thing?
Sure.
But to connect with people, like you said, from the culture, who are like, actually, this could be big for my family and for the people that I'm around, because this is an opportunity for us to maybe change the game that we're already stuck in with these corporate algorithms and these big tech companies that already have all the power on the internet. Like, we do need new technology to move this forward. And so that's what the conversation was about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, super dope. It definitely is bringing a lot of light in a time where it feels like there's just left and right every single week. This channel specifically, I like to make sure that I always put a magnifying glass on the ridiculousness sometimes that occurs at Spotify, just to really more so to inform, but really more so to let my artists and creator community know, like, we need to be on our toes. We need to be active. We need to figure out what our alternative means for us to generate income and make this a sustainable living. Because it's just hard for me to believe all these genius minds that exist in our space, like yourself, that are in this space. There's no way in hell that we just take all this stuff happening and we just say, well, that's just how it goes, and I guess this is how we have to deal with it. When it's like, no, there's other options out here, and there's things here for you to go ahead and tap into. Any final words, as well as preferred platforms if they want to reach out to you?
My website, brandontory.com, has like the source of truth about me. So I would definitely encourage you to use that. And then all my socials are on there. And just on your last point, which I think is critical, is really voices like yours that's so important. That's really the interface for artists to understand. I see you on social pretty much every day saying like, yo, we got to set our own value. We got to set our own value. Like, that's actually how the revolution happens. It's like the revolution won't be televised. It's just people saying it. And eventually you get the collective consciousness, and then eventually you get the right technology, and then eventually things change. And I think ultimately it comes down to us remembering the value that we brought to this space through the culture. And I think also remembering, like, what was the why? Like, why did we start making music? What was the why behind it?
Right.
And I think the more we get tapped into the purpose of the music, the more it resonates, and the more easy it will be to spread the message.
I'll tell you, they look at me sometimes, and those who are encouraged by me, they love the information. Sometimes it's not packaged up in the way that they want to hear it. But then as gentlemen like you that come into the space, they're like, you know what? Had Curtis been able to express it like this, maybe I would have been all ears. Or maybe it just takes time. I had this inner dialogue with myself. You're not crazy, Curtis. Sometimes you're just early.
Yo,
And
so I put out my album Unicorn. So I signed with Dallas Austin a couple of years ago. He helped me, and I put out this album Unicorn.
right.
And I was frustrated with the music industry and everything else. I went off to found this tech company. This was years ago. I went to an event in the city the other day, and somebody from the neighborhood who I hadn't seen in years was like, "Yo, the album's crazy." And what I noticed was that, yo, I put that album out 3 years ago. You're just not hearing it. So, so with the way the internet works,
Right.
it's gonna take 2 years for people to even catch up to the stuff that I'm talking about right now. So
Yeah.
you just got to keep saying things. It's almost like a song. You got to repeat the hook. You got to repeat the hook. That's the main thing.
No, and I'm figuring out that you don't judge it by just people's actions. That's a very important, kind of measurement of whether what you're saying is sticking. But you also judge it by the type of questions that the quality of questions that they're asking. Because now what I notice is that it went from there's no way in hell people are going to pay for your music to, well, it only happened because you had a platform to, well, how does someone as a beginner so I'm starting to see the nature of the questions changing. And to me, maybe in the past that wouldn't have been that, but it's encouraging for me because I'm realizing that, they're seeing the same things that a lot of times we saw years and years before, in that, no. For somebody who's conducting this as a business, and that's something that I'll say before I came to the YouTube space, when I was just full-time artist, full-time producer, whether that's done purposely or not, I don't know, but it felt like there was so little time for me to actually learn the foundation of creating a sustainable business, a growing business, create systems and all these things. And it took me having a YouTube. It took me having a platform to learn, like, okay, this is a format, this is a system. Before I recognized, when I came back as an artist full time, I said, "There's no way in hell." I looked around and I was like, it's almost like I'm watching these X-Men '97 episodes. And when you see like the bishops of the world and cables of the world going back to the past, and they're like, none of this makes any sense.
Right.
That's kind of how I felt coming back into the space as an artist. But I'm encouraged that it's a very different world than it was 9 years ago, before I even chose to get into the content space. And now I'm able to leverage this stuff and have conversations with brilliant individuals like yourself, man. We salute you, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Hopefully the audience got something out of it. And, thanks for giving me a platform to talk about the technology and my story.
Absolutely. And once again, that information is down there below. Make sure you guys go tap in. And as Brandon said, you can absolutely go and join the Discord if you have direct questions. But I suggest the same thing that I'm doing as myself as an independent artist. Seek out the information. I would highly suggest that you go to the Formless YouTube channel, since we're already on YouTube. If you want to get a really great breakdown, there's a video. I'll link it after this one, but it's one of the newest uploads on the channel, and it really gives you a 25-minute crash course right into this world, and it's described in a way that I know most artists are going to understand and know why we're having a conversation now. But nonetheless, thank you once again, man. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This will stay up. I will get to time stamping this as soon as possible. Make sure that you do sign up. I will see you soon. Have a good one, DIYers.